project we're currently looking at is really interesting, and we're looking into the genetic component behind behavioural traits, and specifically the behavioural traits that have been associated with entrepreneurism. Now, there's a number of sort of behaviour types that are associated with entrepreneurism. A couple of them around sort of neuroticism, conscientiousness, and actually openness to experience. And interestingly, these sort of behaviours, they involve sort of risk-taking, they involve sort of actually looking at opportunities. And there are well-studied genetic components behind those. So there's a gene, for example, called COMT, which, depending on the version, actually classes you as what's called a warrior, or a worrier, or a strategist. And that's depending on a dopamine response to stressful stimuli. So how you react to stress and how you do that under pressure or when you're in times of low pressure can change. And these are well studied around, they actually are common amongst entrepreneurs. And there's also been good studies so far looking at identical twins versus non-identical twins and the similarities of their work life later on. And by that we can start to say there's a heritable component to people being entrepreneurial, or their behavioural being entrepreneurial. So interesting, we're doing this project to try and discover more about that and understand what are the genetic components and how can we best use those to create the best work environment for everyone, no matter how their genetics are profiled. So interestingly, we can use these behavioural traits to then hopefully guide like the best environment. So say, okay, if someone's more of a strategist around that gene, how can we, give them that information so we can better foster a work environment which allows them to thrive versus someone who's the warrior version of that gene. And so there's some really fascinating stuff there. And interestingly, going back to my sporting career, a lot of these traits, these behavioural traits, are common among sports people too. And maybe one of the reasons why we see sports people go down the entrepreneurial road a lot more than probably the average population do. And so this crossover between sort of the behaviour around sport, the behaviour in sort of business leaders, etc., to follow their own path, to be entrepreneurial, I think a really interesting crossover. So with this project, we're hoping to better understand these genetic components more than we ever have before, so we can actually give better advice around fostering the best work environment for everybody.